Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into an absolutely fascinating thought experiment, a massive what if. Imagine an alternate timeline where the ancient world didn't just crumble into ruins. What if ancient Egypt never fell, but instead adapted, evolved, and survived straight through to the present day? We're talking about a world where the pharaohs are still in charge, not as ancient history, but as the leaders of a 21st century global superpower. Let's get right into it.
Okay, let's set the scene. Picture yourself looking out the window of a supersonic jet. You're not seeing the familiar urban sprawl of modern Cairo or the weathered, step-faced ruins of Giza. No, instead, you're descending over the Horus International Transit Hub toward the megalopolis of Mennefer, which we'd call Memphis. Below you, the Great Pyramids are completely pristine. They're clad in polished white limestone, capped with shimmering photovoltaic gold leaf alloys, and literally plugged into a modern power grid. It's the year 2026 in the United Kingdom of Kemet, where the official motto printed on their plastic-free polymer banknotes is Life, Prosperity, Health. So, the obvious question we have to ask is how? Seriously, how on earth did Kemet survive the Bronze Age collapse, outlast the mighty Roman Empire, navigate the Middle Ages, and entirely bypass the destructive colonial eras to become a modern titan? Well, to understand this, we're going to flash back through history. We're going to trace the exact crucial pivot points where history didn't break for the pharaohs, but instead bent completely in their favor. But before we get into the epic battles and the treaties, we absolutely have to understand the beating heart of their civilization, and that is Ma'at. This is the ancient Kemetic concept of cosmic order, truth, and balance. In our timeline, we often view this just as a religion or mythology, but in this unbroken timeline, Ma'at was highly practical statecraft. Maintaining order against chaos wasn't just a spiritual idea. It was the guiding philosophy driving literally every military, scientific, and environmental decision they made for thousands of years. Which brings us to our first major shift, where history bent. Surviving the Iron Age and Mediterranean clashes. Now, what's really interesting here is looking at these massive historical shifts. You can see Kemet consistently outmaneuvering its absolute greatest ancient threats. Let's break it down. In 1177 BCE, instead of falling to assassination and economic ruin, Ramesses III survives. Fast forward to 700 BCE, and a totally united Kemet crushes the Assyrian advance. By 525 BCE, they completely repel the Persians. And then, the big one, by 30 BCE, instead of being conquered by Rome, they force a geopolitical stalemate. So how exactly did they pull all this off? Well, the whole foundation of their survival really starts with the Great Edict of Pir-Ramesses. Shaken by assassination attempts and constant war, Ramesses III completely restructured the state. He stripped administrative power away from the dangerously wealthy temple priests and handed it over to meritocratic scribes who actually had to pass competitive exams to get their jobs. Plus, instead of letting foreign mercenaries form independent, rebellious factions, he integrated them fully as citizens, creating a highly disciplined professional army known as the Shield of Pharaoh. And honestly, his most brilliant move? Recognizing the shift in military technology. The crown set up state-run iron smelteries, cornered the market, and completely bypassed those vulnerable copper trade routes. Practically overnight, they became an unbreakable Iron Age power. And that sheer pragmatism is exactly what saved them during the Persian Wars in 525 BCE. Now, in our timeline, the Persians won the Battle of Pelusium by using cats, which were sacred to the Egyptians, as living shields to stop them from firing their bows. Pretty wild, right? But in this timeline, the Persians faced a technologically advanced, incredibly pragmatic defender. Kemet deployed riverine war galleys equipped with incendiary siphons. The Kemetic archers viewed the defense of the state as the ultimate service to Ma'at, so they fired right through the Persian vanguard, animals and all. It was a devastating, total rout that permanently secured their borders. That undeniable military strength completely changed their dynamic with Rome. In this reality, Cleopatra VII wasn't some tragic romantic figure. Not at all. She was a shrewd, calculating sovereign holding all the best cards. Kemet controlled the global grain supply and the incredibly lucrative Red Sea trade routes to India. So instead of risking a massive war that would literally starve Italy, Julius Caesar and later Augustus were forced to sign the Treaty of Alexandria. They quite literally partitioned the ancient world, allowing Rome to expand out west while Kemet totally dominated the east. Moving into the Middle Ages, we arrive at the House of Life, Renaissance and accommodation. So the crucial point to understand here is that when the Roman Empire Christianized, the Egyptian temple system didn't just collapse into irrelevance. Instead, it evolved. The pharaohs, or House of Life, transformed from a purely ritual space into a classical research hub and eventually morphed into a modern scientific institute. Why? Because understanding the fundamental laws of nature was seen as a holy duty to maintain Ma'at. Because of that mindset, scientific inquiry absolutely exploded. By the year 1000, these institutions gave us the root word for chemistry, they developed early forms of sulfuric acid, and they were even using moldy bread as an early form of penicillin to treat wounds. Just incredible stuff.
Their diplomatic brilliance didn't stop there. It carried right on through the rise of Islam in the 7th century. Pharaoh Horem had VII used Kemet's philosophical monism, which is basically the idea that all gods are just manifestations of one supreme creator, to find common ground. This led to the Covenant of the River in 642 CE. It was a mutual non-aggression pact with the Umayyad Caliphate. By guaranteeing freedom of trade, actively protecting the Hajj routes, and linking global maritime networks, Kemet completely saved its empire from catastrophic religious wars, all while massively boosting their global economy.
Next up is the hydraulic revolution, powering an empire without coal.
Entering the era of global exploration, Kemet's approach was vastly different from Europe's. In 1512, an expedition led by the navigator Harkuf of Sais crossed the Atlantic and discovered South America, which they named Amentet. But driven by the principles of Ma'at, their goal wasn't violent colonization or resource extraction. Instead, they focused on diplomatic alliances. They treated bronze and iron for things like potatoes and maize. And crucially, they shared medical quarantine protocols, totally avoiding the devastating plagues that wiped out entire populations in our timeline.
And this brilliantly illustrates how their unique geography spurred a totally different kind of industrial revolution. While Europe became reliant on dirty coal, Kemet utilized the endless, reliable kinetic energy of the Nile. They built massive, incredibly advanced water turbines at the first cataract in Swenet. This powerful hydraulic engine fueled huge textile mills and automated papyrus complexes, and eventually that tech transitioned directly into early electrical dynamos. They essentially bypassed fossil fuels altogether, jump-starting a green industrial revolution centuries before anyone else even thought about it. Bringing us to life in 2026, a day in modern Kemet. Let's take a look at what everyday life actually feels like in this world. I'd like you to meet Seneb Ebe. He's a 28-year-old software architect living in Waset. He wakes up to totally clean air, powered entirely by solar and river turbines. The first thing he does is face east to perform the duo to Ra. It's really fascinating because this isn't some form of blind ancient worship. It's a quiet, civic acknowledgement of cosmic balance, just expressing gratitude for the return of daylight. After that, he throws on a modern, smart fiber linen tunic that actually repels dirt, finishes his look with a silver ankh pendant, and gets ready to start his day.
Now, when he checks his phone, we see this incredible, unbroken linguistic survival. Modern Kemet actually uses 3 distinct scripts. Seneb Ib texts his colleagues using a phonetic, digital Latinized demotic shorthand, perfect for rapid global communication and coding. Meanwhile, standard demotic is the go-to for daily news media and business contracts. And of course, those stunning formal hieroglyphics, they're still actively used today for official state decrees and all their monumental architecture. It's this beautiful, seamless fusion of the ancient and the modern, and it extends right into the physical cityscape.
Take his commute, for instance. Senebid rides the Aten Express, which is a lightning-fast, silent maglev monorail. And the cityscape outside his window is just breathtaking. The skyscrapers aren't your typical boring glass boxes. They are inward-sloping pylons, designed just like ancient temples to offer maximum seismic stability. The whole architectural vibe is deeply biophilic. You've got wind catchers providing natural ventilation, and lush roof gardens that perfectly mimic the primeval marsh. Oh, and at the major intersections, there are these grand, towering statues of historical pharaohs that actually house public Wi-Fi transmitters and environmental sensors right inside their granite crowns. How cool is that? Over lunch, maybe grabbing some fool madams and Nile perch, Senebabid and his friends might chat about politics or the upcoming Ra Voyager 4 deep space probe launch. Kemet operates as a constitutional divine monarchy. Pharaoh Neferkare, the 17th, serves as the spiritual head of state, while a parliament, known as the House of Scribes, actually governs day-to-day from Alexandria. But what's truly remarkable is their constitution, the Codex of Maat. Because of their ancient legal traditions, gender equality wasn't some modern uphill struggle. It's been baked right into their society for millennia. and environmental balance is strictly legally mandated. The Nile River itself is literally considered a living legal entity with its own rights. So, to really drive this home, let's summarize the profound differences between our world and theirs. In our timeline, our cities are full of globalized glass boxes, and we visit ancient ruins as tourists. In theirs, they live in thriving, sustainable neo-pharaonic architecture. We are constantly taking reactive measures to fight climate change. They proactively mandate cosmic balance as a foundational law. We had to fight tooth and nail for gender equality in the modern era. They've had it inherent in their legal code since the New Kingdom. And while Africa in our timeline is still recovering from centuries of colonial exploitation, in theirs, Kemet stands unbroken as the cultural and economic anchor of a massive global superpower. Which brings us to a final, really provocative thought. In the unbroken timeline of Kemet, human progress didn't require the destruction of heritage. Advanced technology didn't demand the blind exploitation of nature. It really leaves us wondering if the philosophy of Ma'at, this core idea of truth, justice, and cosmic order, had guided our own technological and industrial revolutions. What kind of world would we have built? Thank you so much for exploring this incredible alternate timeline with me on today's Explainer.
Please like and subscribe.